What's up, people of the world? As you know, it is currently Max Fun Drive 2020. Now, Max Fun Drive is, among other things, when we release all of our exclusive bonus content for the year. We've heard a lot of people telling us about how much bonus content is helping to brighten their days in these weird times. So right now seems like a great time to remind you that the bonus content is here for you when you join.
You can become a member easily at MaximumFun.org/join. Choose an amount that fits within your monthly budget, be it $5 a month, $10 a month, or $20 per month and up, whatever level you choose. Your support, combined with that of other Max Fun members like you, enable us to keep producing the show. Make sure that you tell Max Fun that you listen to our show and you want us to benefit from your membership. It's very easy to do, very clear, whether you're upgrading or joining for the first time. That is MaximumFun.org/join to sign up and see all the cool gifts available, and thanks for your support. But for now, on with the show.
Patent pending.
Hello, I'm Hal Lublin.
And I'm Mark Gagliardi.
Since the dawn of humanity, one issue has gone unsettled. With the fate of the world in the balance, we're here to settle, once and for all, best video game console.
That's right. Don't worry, everyone. We got this.
Podcasts should have a theme song. Podcasts should not have a theme song. Yes, they should. No, they shouldn't. They sound good. Yeah, but people are just going to skip past it. You know what? You're right. We got this.
Now, before we say anything about video games, I want to thank the Poodoo for, number one, choosing that screen name on Reddit. Number two, suggesting this topic, which has been in the hopper for a long time.
Yeah. What does the poo do?
You know, whatever it wants.
Fair enough. Thank you, the Poodoo.
Yeah. Thanks for the Poodoo that you do.
We are talking video game consoles today. Mm-hmm. What is the greatest video game console of all time? And I'm out of my depth on this one. I'm not a huge gamer. I know you are, Hal. So we decided to bring in a ringer. Yes. Friend of the show, a great past guest, and a great current guest. You're very lucky, those listening to this episode.
And on a gaming headset.
And he's on a gaming headset.
That's right. That's right.
It's Nathan Hamill. What's up?
Hi there. Hello. Yes. Sorry, I missed the cue to introduce myself, but thank you for getting me set up there. How's it going, guys?
You know, we're locked down. The world is in tumult right now, and we're all trying to safely do what we can to help it.
The best part is there's a lot of time to play video games.
Yes.
Yeah. There are no commutes anymore. We all live at home all the time, and if you have games, and I have multiple gaming systems, I know you have an extensive collection, Nathan. You have time to do whatever you want gaming-wise, which creates the paradox of, am I going to play several games at once? Am I going to play one game all the way through?
What do you guys usually do with that?
How many hours into Animal Crossing are you? That's the real question here, because with this the pandemic, the shutdown started on the 15th, roughly. And this game came out the 20th. I'm getting my timeline's all screwed up. I don't know, but it was in March. It was like within a few days. And I think it was the 20th. And I started playing a few days later, and I haven't looked back. I've played every friggin' day. So
you're probably well over 1,000 hours, right?
No. I'm not going to disclose. You know, you never ask a lady how many hours she's played in Animal Crossing. So, yeah, it's over 500, and I'll leave it at that. But it's not not as high as some people we know who. Hi, Ken.
Does the game clock how many hours you've played?
Yeah, it starts. I think with any of these Switch games, it starts after you. First it says played for a few days, and then it starts clocking it. I don't know if it clocks it when you're inactive. I think when it goes to sleep, it stops clocking it. This is all for the Uber Animal Crossing nerds.
Look, there are some. That is a huge thing. That Animal Crossing.
Yeah. It's been great. It's a really good distraction from what's all the craziness going on right now. So.
Yeah, and it's part of the most recent wave of consoles, along with Xbox One and PlayStation 4, that comprise the current main console market. But we're going to go all the way back. Starting in the late 60s with the invention of the brown box, which led to the 1972 commercial release of the Magnavox Odyssey, into Pong, into a ton of like Coleco and Immersion and early Atari consoles that you probably have never heard of and don't know at all. And rather than get into all that, we're going to go all the way through and we're going to pick the very best video game console. And the challenge is, and Mark, I'm interested in what your thoughts are on this. This really feels like apples to oranges. They're all video game consoles, but what you can do on a console now is so much better. If you just go by tech specs alone, it runs circles around things that came out 10 years ago. So how do we pick something and compare it to things that came before? What do you think, Mark?
I think this, more than any of the ones that we've done, I think is going to be about its impact. We always talk about like cultural impact when we're doing these. I think that's going to be a big factor in it. There are things that, aside from, like, if it's just based on graphics, it's going to be whatever the most recent ones are, would be the only contenders. If it were about graphics and, you know, tech specs. But I think there's a lot more to look at in this. I think that we have to look at the cultural impact. We have to look at accessibility. I feel that's sort of my function in this, is to be the outside gamer, because I look at it and I'm like, well, the ones that I love the most are Kinect and Wii, because you can play them in a party with a bunch of people who don't really play games. They're two different gaming worlds, I think. There's the world of gaming that happens locally, and then there's the online world of gaming. And those are two very different things too. You can have friends that you've made friends that you only know through gaming. And then there's the local version where if I have my buddies over, we can all grab a Nintendo Wii controller and have a bowling night.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. In fact, we once did have a bowling night where my favorite detail of the bowling night was I went to my friend's place. This is when the Wii first came out. And he had set up 4 folding chairs on either side of the room. And in the middle of the room where the Nintendo Wii was where the controller would sit, and you would go pick up your controller. And next to the controller, you had a little portable fan that was blowing up.
That's great.
So we would go and like put your hand in front of the little fan.
Did you guys clean your balls like the Jesus and do that whole thing?
Yeah, exactly. We had that little shaky cloth buffer.
So on the other side of that, Nathan, you're a more hardcore gamer. You've played a ton of different platforms. I'd love for you to walk us through your history with games and also talk about, to you, what makes a console great in your eyes.
Okay. Now that's interesting because I don't play as much as I actually read and listen to podcasts. I've slowed down, but I know I stay up on all the news, which I don't know what that's so weird. I don't know how many people do that. I spend more time watching. I mean, I really hadn't played the Switch in a while. But like we said, that when Animal Crossing came out, it's just been playing a lot. I've slowed down as I've kind of like built up the island, but I have projects. I have like plans. I have my girlfriend's 10. When we got the game, we got so into it that she had to buy her own Switch and move from that island. So I have a tribute house to her where it's got it's an empty. It's got like creepy, spooky things that she left outside, and there's dinosaur fossils above as a tribute to her. It's crazy, but it's a great game. I think I started playing on the Odyssey 2. My parents had that one. So, and that had like, I think the overlay that you'd put on the TV where you could, you actually put on the TV and had the racing games and stuff. And then I think it was probably one of the Ataris, but I can't remember which ones that we grew up on. But the big one for me was in 85, I saw a neighbor in New York had a Nintendo Entertainment System. And that was, I mean, I think it was that winter it came out, and it was like, he got one early, and it was mind blowing. I was like, you can play this in your house? There's an arcade. What is like Super Mario Brothers for the first time? I remember where I was in his kitchen. Like it was, was that the dolly thing they do when Spielberg and Hitchcock did? Well, I forget what the term is for that. It was that moment where I was just mind blown.
The thriller shot.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that was my start, and just went from there. Dropped out of gaming when I guess around the time of like N64, and stopped playing for a little bit because I discovered girls and music, and then I was right back into it. So
sure.
I was gone for like, I think a year or something, and then kind of got back in.
If you had an Odyssey as a kid, you're a little younger than we are. Did you inherit video games from your dad? Is that something you would do together? Because my dad was like the technology, Commodore 64 we played games on, then he got an Atari that I would play on more than him. Like he would have friends over and he had to be in his late 20s, early 30s. He would have his friends over and they would sit and play Atari. And that was when I couldn't be on. I would just sort of watch them play and hang out.
Yeah. He would play. See, my memories of him playing was when we had original NES. He could play Mario Brothers. My mom, I think, picked it up and was just like, "No, this isn't for me." And wait, you have to hold down B to run. I'm out. That's too complicated. This isn't, Millipede or Pac-Man. But he, we always made fun of him because, he would play one night he stayed up all night cross-legged on the floor playing Jaws by LGN. And like, I just have this memory, like, you've been up all night, 64 slices of American cheese. Like, but we still have an ongoing joke because he was so proud. He was so happy when he beat The Little Mermaid on NES. And we were like, "Oh, did you beat The Little Mermaid? Oh, good for you. Oh, how's your little baby game?" So it's kind of a running joke where he has a section in his office where it's Little Mermaid cartridges. Like every year, if I find one, I'll be like, "Here you go. It's a cartridge. Here it is on Game Gear now. Now you can have the whole Little Mermaid collection."
Hey, don't knock those cheap movie tie-in games.
Yeah,
I was addicted to those as a kid. I played Goonies 2. I think I played Little Mermaid. I definitely played Aladdin on the Genesis.
Sure.
All those Disney movies made great games.
Now you have Kingdom Hearts, which is like one of the more popular role-playing games out there. So they figured out, is that a Square Enix game? Is that who they're
yes
partnering with on that?
It was Square, and there was two companies that combined with the Final Fantasy guys. I'm not as familiar with early RPGs. I think we played like Rygar and some of those. That was kind of an action RPG on Nintendo.
Yeah.
But all those Disney games, they were all done by Capcom, or I think there was a couple in-house. And interestingly enough, to some people, I guess anyway, there was some people listening here, the original idea for Donkey Kong. I guess I'm getting sidetracked. I'm getting my games mixed up, but Miyamoto wanted Donkey Kong to be Popeye, and they later did a Popeye game. But the original construction, if you look at it, it would be Bluto and Popeye trying to rescue Olive Oil. It's the exact, I mean, he just switched out the sprites because they couldn't get the license to it.
And the rest is history, and they invented Mario.
Yeah. And he started with Donkey Kong, and then he did Mario, Zelda, Pikmin. He's the Disney of Nintendo, Miyamoto. Yeah.
Well, let's jump back to the very beginning. You mentioned the Odyssey 2. Let's talk about the Odyssey 1. I don't know where the Odyssey 2 fits in, but the Odyssey itself, it was just 3 dots. Came out in 1972. And what is this? You would overlay something onto your screen because it just didn't have the graphics. So it's like, oh, here, just put this transparency up. Or I'm not even sure how this would work.
I guess they just didn't have enough memory. They had enough to have a block, but it's like, no, we can't have a grid for you in the game. Mm-hmm. So you put it up on the TV and race. And I mean, look where we are now with the PS5 coming out. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, and those games. So all the Odysseys that came, I think there were like 5 or 6 different versions of the Odyssey. Each one was like a little better than the one before. Now, when you come out with the next generation console, you have to make a significant leap, and part of that is because you have a competitor, whether it's Sega and Nintendo, or now Microsoft and Sony and Nintendo, who is going to try to make everything, we're going to make a jump to the next level of graphic ability and memory. The games are going to be faster and more detailed and more complex. But the Odyssey made like sort of baby steps, while all of these different, maybe lesser known consoles were trying to get into the market with like, this one has a light gun. Like the light gun is a pretty early.
The light gun came in with Odyssey. Yeah.
But it didn't really come back until the NES. Like the Atari, you didn't really play on a light gun. It was all about your joystick. And it was the Intellivision, which came out around the same time, had what I thought was the worst controller in history. It looked like an old remote control, had a dial at the top and a number pad, and you would slip in cards based on what game you were playing, and that would change what the controls were, which is interesting. I'll give it that. But I could not, as a child who could play games and play them well, every time I got on the Intellivision, I was like, this is like the floor in Last Crusade. I'm gonna press on the wrong thing. I'm gonna follow it through the ground.
I'll tell you, that was my introduction to video games, was the Intellivision that my grandparents had at their house.
Wait, were they playing?
I think they bought it for when the grandkids came over.
Right. Yeah.
I love the idea that my former police officer grandfather was playing some cops and robbers game. Just like, he was retired, but he wanted to still be out there in the field. But yeah, the worst thing that could happen was you would lose those little plastic things, the little plastic sheets that you would slide over the keypad. And then we would just try to have to remember what it looked like.
Oh man.
We're like, I think the 8 meant fire. So yeah, it was like playing. I mean, look, we've come a long way from playing games on what looked like a phone to having a phone that looks like a video game television.
Yeah.
So,
I ran over to my bookshelf to grab. Should have had this ready. It's a history of Nintendo. So I'm sort of showing my my favorite company here already,
Sure.
But it goes. I mean, I don't know if you guys knew this, but it goes. I didn't know if you knew this, guys, but it goes back to.
Did you just actually us?
Yes, actually, they were founded in 1889.
I'm sorry, 1889.
1889. So they
They were
were
a playing card company, weren't they?
Yeah, Hanafuda playing cards, and they were. I mean, I got to go to Japan once, like 10 years ago or so, and went to Kyoto where there's a little building, and that one was established in. God, I'm sounding like a Nintendo nerd here, but that's okay. 1933. I have a picture. We happened to be there, and I'm like, is there any way we can go to Kyoto before Tokyo? Anyhow, Ken cut this part out. I'm not going to swear this time, but cut that part out, or will I? It's just they play this. It's this traditional Japanese playing card game called Hanafuda, and they had ties with the Yakuza. Or the Yakuza, if you're a stickler for that kind of pronunciation. But they did all these toys. They were a toy company essentially, and they had love hotels. They made rice. They made playing cards. And they tried everything. You can look. Here's 1975. They were doing a coin and stick game, Mr. Magician.
I'll say this makes perfect sense that Nintendo is, and that's why Nintendo has always felt like an outlier, is these other consoles, they seem like video game consoles in the model of video game consoles and in a linear path of making video game consoles better. Nintendo feels like, how does a toy company approach the idea of video games?
Exactly. Yeah. I've been fascinated, with them, since I saw that first game, but their first video games would be mid-70s. Chapter 8, the first video game consoles. This is a book called The History of Nintendo, 1889 to 1980, from playing cards to Game & Watch. And it's crazy. They had one that was kind of like the, early Wii, which was called the Color TV Game 6, which is from June of 1977, and it had a bunch of sports games on it, and it was it's a little box, and it sold for 9,800 yen, so $98. And I mean, then they did the Game & Watch, which was basically the DS before the DS. It had the two, it folded and opened. It had the Popeye game, but they were pretty advanced at that point. We were talking about, just talking about the other ones, and like just in a few years, they went to like really addictive, fun, gameplay.
Mm-hmm. But these were strictly available in Japan?
These were, yes. I mean, I can't imagine what these things go for nowadays, but if you guys know anyone, let me know. No.
Yeah, right.
I'm not going down that rabbit hole. But all these tabletops, Block Fever. Here's another interesting tidbit: is the guy who created the Game Boy. He created the Ultra Hand, which is what we know that claw toy.
Oh, you mean it's like a long arm with a little grip on one end, and then it's the thing that you use to get socks from behind the dryer when they fall.
Exactly, and that was a toy that they did. That guy, Gunpei Yupoi, is that his name? I might be mispronouncing it. Anyhow, but everyone knows that the claw. And then he went on. He did the Game Boy, and unfortunately, the Virtual Boy also. So that was his last.
The real winner of this episode.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, we can end it now. It's the Virtual Boy. Thank you, guys.
It's heard of the Virtual Boy.
Oh, yeah. There's a Virtual Boy at the Max Fun headquarters, sitting on a shelf. but it was a small, it had a little tripod to it. It was small red, like headset. You would lean into it while you were playing. And it was about as advanced. I forget when it came out. I feel like it was early to mid 90s.
95, I think.
Yeah. So it was like the lowest end of what you could do with virtual reality gaming in 1990.
It was Lawnmower Man VR.
No, Lawnmower Man looks like...
It was their attempt of doing the 3DS, but their technology wasn't there. Nintendo always they release slightly outdated technology so they can release it, perfect it, and release it at a lower price to keep costs down and have it longevity for it. Like the Game Boy was inferior to the Lynx and Game Gear, but it used 2 batteries, or maybe it was 4. The other ones used 6 and lasted, you burn through them. And batteries, they got expensive back then. You're buying 6 AA batteries for, a car ride, and it would last, the first 3 hours. It's not gonna work. And the Game Boy, you put in your pocket, they had Tetris with it. So it's like anyone could understand. The fact that that's a whole other story. We'll do this as another podcast, but the story of Tetris versus Arkanoid will be the next versus.
Wow. Versus Breakout.
Your Breakout, yeah.
I do want to talk about the Lynx in a little bit, but just to go back to these early, I think out of these early machines, the Atari 2600 and it's the 5200 that came after it, those were sort of the king of video games that most people had, that led to the boom in home video games and then the eventual crash because they didn't have, I think one of the things that will be a distinctive factor when we get down to finalists, and I think it's where the Atari 2600 falls down, is the lack of distinct titles, which now is as much about licensing from different developers as it is what you have in-house. But while Atari has a lot of early games, their version of Pac-Man was inferior. Their versions of the games that were popular in arcades didn't hold up. And the ones they did have that you might remember, like Breakout was a good one, and Warlords was kind of a better version of Breakout where you could play with 4 people. Their games just are not as good. And I love the Atari. Pitfall is a great game, and the commercial was a young Jack Black.
But not made by
Activision.
Yeah, that's right.
The one that started Activision. I didn't know the commercial had Jack Black in it.
It did, yeah, it's a little kid. But those are the best. I think Activision made the best Atari games because they had Pitfall, River Raid, Keystone Cops. Those were like the best titles that they
Keystone
had.
Cops. You always want to tie it into whatever the most popular movie of the moment is.
Sure.
So back in 1977, Keystone Cops, everybody was watching them.
I really like the Kramer versus Kramer game personally. But,
It was so good.
Yeah.
You have to aim the glass at the wall, right?
You have to navigate a cursor through divorce.
Well, now they have on PS4 the Marriage Story game, and that one the graphics are better. So what was it? So they had Breakout. Arkanoid was another one, and then Nintendo did their own called Alleyway that was on Game Boy, where all they did was Mario runs and jumps into the Pong block, you know what I mean? The paddle. Yeah, man.
But these systems up to 1983, that's a good cutoff point for this first segment of it. It seems like what's the star of this time, as fun as the ColecoVision was, and as fun as, or not fun as the Intellivision was, but as nostalgic as it is for me. Yeah, I think the Atari 2600 is the juggernaut of this time. So much so that the market was flooded, and eventually they very famously had to bury 700,000 video games in the New Mexico desert.
I do love that ColecoVision was and there are a lot of stories that will probably just refer to this idea that there was something superior that didn't sell as well. And ColecoVision, I thought, was a better system than Atari graphically. So we had close family friends who got a ColecoVision, and they were on vacation when it arrived. So my dad, they asked my dad to go pick it up, and we were allowed to play with it for a couple of weeks while they were away. And I played Donkey Kong on that thing. And it felt like I was in an arcade playing Donkey Kong. It was, I didn't know that a video game system could look that good on TV because it made Atari look like crap. Like just a pile of squares moving around.
Isn't that what all of this is? It's just the squares have gotten much, much smaller.
They're smaller squares now.
Now they're circles. They used to be squares, and now
That's
they're
true.
Yeah. Tangent. Did you guys see the PS5 announcement?
Yes.
We throw this in at the end, maybe, but yeah. What are your thoughts on? I know we're jumping around here, Ken. Sorry, Ken. You're gonna have to edit this a little. Place this part at the end.
I'm very excited for a new cookies and cream console that I can play. It looks terrible, but it almost doesn't matter. It could have been a middle finger that had FU Hal carved on it, and I would still be like, all right, so I can pre-order it now, and it'll be here in November. That's how that works.
Personally, I like the design because it looks like something like the Nostromo, especially if you got the disc drive.
I've seen this one. It
looks like a building in downtown LA. There's a building in downtown LA that looks like a PS3. And the old model, fat 60 gig.
Yeah.
And I like this design. The question is, do you get the discless one, or do you get? It's true. This man has no disc. Do you get the discless one, or do you get because the discless one is symmetrical and it kind of forms a V if you look at the. I don't know. I'm someone who's still old school where I go, I want to have the option of backwards compatibility.
Right.
Just I want it there, even if I don't use it. But it's all going to come down to price, and I'm not going to. Yeah. I'm never a day one Sony guy. But
backwards compatibility. Let's go on another brief tangent.
Yeah, sure.
Because this is going to come up a lot with these systems. I think that's actually an important part of it, because as a pedestrian gamer, one thing that I don't like about getting a new system, in the same way that it's like, okay, well, you switch from cassettes to CDs and suddenly your cassettes are all obsolete.
Yeah.
That was what made the PlayStation 2 so epically huge, was that PlayStation 2 could play PlayStation 1 games.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that is, so you've doubled your catalog of games that you can play. If you've spent, several $100s on a bookshelf full of PlayStation 1 games, they're not all made obsolete by the fact that red, white, and yellow jack on the back of your TV is now occupied by a completely different system.
Yeah. Now, I think you played the Sonys more than I did, but was that the first? I'm trying to think. What was the first backwards? It was probably like a Mega Drive or like their original Genesis, or it was probably an adapter that I'm not familiar with, because the Master System was not didn't do well here. And I think it did really well in Japan and in Brazil. Brazil and Europe, the Mega Drive and the Master System did very well.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that there was an attachment, because the Genesis was top loading, that you could put into a Genesis. It was like it was like an adapter that sat on top of it that let you put in Master System games, but they're like outside of like Rocky and their baseball was good. Genesis was such a good system. It was a bigger deal with Sony because the PlayStation sold so well that to go to the 2 and what happens instantly, not only is the console expensive, but the games are generally $50 to $60 to $70 right out of the gate. So to be able to play that old library is a big deal. And I remember when the 3 came out being kind of disappointed because there were games on the 2 that I really liked that I couldn't bring with me.
Yeah. And then they had the DVD player on the PS2. That was a big deal. I think that's what that. I think it's up there with. It's one of the. I think it's the DS is still. It's the PS2 or the DS is the highest selling system. I don't have my notes, but it's that was major. Even not owning, I didn't own I didn't get into Sony until like a PS3, and it was for the Blu-ray. I got one of the launch 60 gig ones. It was already sold out because I wasn't going to pay. That was that debacle where they released it for $600, and we'll see if history repeats itself with the PS5. But that was I got a used one, and I wanted to get the original 60 gig with a motion chip or something. It was the one that played all of it, and then they took it out and they tried to bring the cost down so you couldn't play all your old games. Thanks, Sony.
I do have an answer thanks to our researcher, Kate McManus, who has given us an exhaustive history of the video game consoles. The first console to be backwards compatible was the Atari 7800 in 1984, which would play games all the way back to 1977's Atari 2600.
Wow.
That was the first backwards compatible system. So there you go.
It came out at the wrong time. Yeah. Unfortunately.
It did. It came out right after the big bust. Let's move chronologically past the Atari age and into the big year for video games, not only return, but the return that has never left, the relaunch of video games. And that's 1985 with the Nintendo Entertainment System. That was my first system. And I mean, that's already on the Mount Rushmore, and it's going to be tough to move it out of the Washington spot.
Yeah.
Because that was my first system. That was the first system for everyone I knew as a kid. Growing up, that was it. I even now have the Nintendo Mini that I take with me to work if I know I'm going to have a long day at work, because it's easily portable and can plug into anything. But those are the games that, and maybe this is just because of my age and that was my childhood, but that was what blew it wide open for me. And the idea, like I was joking earlier about Goonies too, that was the first game that I got, aside from Mario and Duck Hunt, which everybody got into because they came with the system. And Excite Bike. I loved Excite Bike.
Ah, yes.
Sure.
But Goonies 2 blew my mind because it was like, wait, they never made a sequel to the movie. They just made the sequel in video game form. Wait, there's mermaids and all the Goonies have been locked up? I have to go save them.
There was no, they weren't concerned with licensing issues. They was just like, put a 2 on it. It's fine. Yeah.
It's amazing. And that, I think it did a great job of unlocking the imagination that video games would eventually come to unlock. Like, because before that, your imagination was limited to believing that this little scissoring green lines were crocodiles underneath a swinging rope in Pitfall.
Sure.
Now you've got the Legend of Zelda, the original Legend of Zelda, and the story of the Triforce, and you have this big, beautiful map. And so all of these amazing imaginative things came out of that time.
If you look at the first year of the Nintendo Entertainment System alone, the basis of video game language, from the Konami code to everything Mario Brothers to even games like Ice Climber and Excite Bike to 10-Yard Fight and like their version of hockey, like there is a shorthand in games that comes from that system. And it certainly collapsed under its own weight at some point because they handed out licenses to anybody. You know, that's when you get games like the Noid, Avoid the Noid, or
the 7-Up Spot had a game.
Did he really?
Yeah.
Right. I don't know what, I'm genderless.
Wait, we're getting back to fast food again.
We always want to talk. Look,
we always
talk about fast food.
All right, guys, let's talk about Hardee's. Wait, which show are we on?
But yeah, like it's just has become timeless. There's a reason why when they released the NES Mini that you have, Mark, and I assume you also have, Nathan, but I do not have.
I hunted one down, and go on. It was infuriating. Yeah,
it's sold out because everybody still. Those games are still playable and still fun. That's like when you have a Switch. One of the great things is when you go online with it, you can play all the old Nintendo games. You can play old Super Nintendo games.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and meanwhile, the miniature version of the Sega Genesis, which also exists, you can get at my CVS.
Well, that was a company called A2, and they were just. I think it was A2. Whatever, but that one is notoriously shoddy. Like, what the sound is all off. They just put out one that you can get at Best Buy, and I think it's already marked down. I have a Genesis 3 here, so it was the slimmed down one from the 90s. But the new one that came out, if you get one at Best Buy and look for, I think it's M2 is the company. I'm getting we have to research that, Ken.
This is the Genesis emulator.
Yeah. So it's the new Genesis Mini. I think it came out last year. That one's supposed to be fantastic. Well, it's supposed to work. That's the difference between the one So just word to any buyers out there: beware of the Costco one or the CVS. Yeah,
I'll tell you one thing that I love about this Mini, and it makes me love and remember the NES. Is one of the games that's on this is Tecmo Bowl.
Yeah,
and I love Tecmo Bowl, and I hadn't thought about this, but I was playing against Eric Edelstein, who always comes up on this show. Mm-hmm. Of course. He was over here playing, a few months ago before, nobody could see each other. And we're playing Tecmo Bowl on the Mini, and I'm playing as Los Angeles, and I know all I have to do is get the ball to my running back. I was like, this game has an amazing running back. And he was like, yeah, because when that game came out, Los Angeles had Bo Jackson as the running back. And they actually Nintendo, or that game specifically, had the foresight of a sports game, which would happen later on, of using actual people. They could never name them, of course.
Right.
But of using actual attributes, like, give the LA team they didn't even use the team names. They hadn't licensed anything from the NFL, but they were like, give that team a great running back, and give the San Francisco team, who isn't the 49ers, but they're red and yellow, give them a great quarterback.
Well, I wanted to move on from the NES because I feel like it's a finalist.
Absolutely.
Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
I wanted to move on to the game system that I saved up money. We had my dad, who's been a real estate broker for pretty much my entire life, he would have like a water cooler. So I had one of the water cooler bottles, one of the plastic bottles, and I filled it with change and dollars and stuff. And the day that I emptied it was to get $289.99 plus tax to buy a Sega Genesis from KB Toys. So I think if the NES is the king of 8-bit consoles, of which there were a few, while Super Nintendo is great and there are a lot of great games on it, the Genesis was the king of the 16-bit console. And it lasted for a very long time and had a ton of great games. You had Altered Beast, Golden Axe, the NHL games, all the NHL. I mean, NHL 93 is immortalized because it's what they're playing in. That's right.
That's right. What are they playing? What were they playing in Mallrats? Were they playing? It was
one of them had Blades of Steel, I thought.
Oh, that was it. I think that was it. Yeah.
It was either Blades of Steel or he was playing like the Sega hockey game that was not licensed. But those NHL games, that was like the rise of EA Sports. Electronic Arts had been around since way earlier, doing stuff like Snokey for Commodore 64 and early computers. But then you get into, this is like where they flourish, and it's the birth of EA Sports, which is one of the most successful gaming companies of all time. And they got licenses. Also, they got licenses with the NHL Players Association, Lakers versus Celtics, and NBA Live, which is the progenitor of everything that we play now. And even came from earlier when they were doing Bird versus Magic and then Bird versus Jordan later on. But that's like the rise of sports and more detailed sports games than you'd ever had before really didn't come along until the Genesis.
Yeah, I think that this is where we're going to differ, because back in the console wars, as they called it, we had the Nintendo, and then our next door neighbors, the Stricklands, got a Genesis. I think that was, like you said, 89. So we wanted to get that. My mom got it for my brother and I, and we were all about it. Yeah, like you said, Altered Beast was what, it blew my mind.
Yeah.
To see that in your home. Revenge of Shinobi was fantastic.
And we should say, for those who don't know, that it's a massive leap in graphics from the Nintendo in 3 short years.
Yeah, it was. Yes. They had it out in Japan like a year before. It's the Mega Drive, and it was the closest you'd seen. I mean, you thought you were playing with power before, but this was like, it was crazy to have these arcade games in your house. There was Afterburner,
the original uncensored OG Mortal Kombat was a Genesis game.
Yeah,
that was
Street Fighter.
Yeah, Street Fighter was, I think, technically better on Super Nintendo, but people would go for, and this is where Nintendo got their kiddie image, because they were very protective over, they wanted to have a squeaky clean image. It was Sweat in the Mortal Kombat version on Super Nintendo. So swap out the sprites, so it wasn't. He's just sweating a lot. He's hot in there. So
when you rip someone's spine out, it's just sweat inside their body.
It was a bouquet of flowers. Yeah.
Oh, by the way, I'm holding a sweat drive later on, just so we have some on hand in case there's a disaster in the area. So
you better eat a cookie after. Yeah.
Get a cookie out. You're going to be a little dizzy after all that sweating.
Let's take a little leap forward from the Genesis from 1988 to 1992. These were happening fast. We went from 8-bit Nintendo in 85 to 16-bit Super Nintendo, or to 16-bit Sega Genesis. And then was the Super Nintendo 16-bit console?
Yes.
Okay.
So that was 2 years later in 91. Mm-hmm. And now what I'll say here is, I think I might give this to you because I'm very close, because I have an idea of what I want the final one to be. So, what I think the winner for me, and we'll see where it goes. But,
But, Neil Gorsuch said the same thing a week ago. I've made up my mind, but change it.
So we got a Genesis. And the next year, because there was no internet, There was it was the playground. It was, I remember drawing in the sand, and this was for Legend of Zelda on NES. You would literally draw in the sand and like go, okay, you go over 3 here and go down, and you burn that bush, and you can go down the stairs. That was, that was our internet. We just had a sandbox and a finger. So we didn't know that was coming out. We saw what the next door neighbors had, and we went, we want to get that. So that next Christmas we got it, and then they announced the Super Nintendo, and I fooled myself into saying, I don't want it. Genesis is better. I would write down all the games that Genesis had, I'd write down in my notebook. I was like 5th grade or something. And I even wrote out that the slogan for the console wars, or the Sega slogan for the ads were, Genesis does what Nintendo don't. That was
right.
That was fun. So I convinced myself, I do not want the Super Nintendo. It sucks. It's stupid. And while I'm seeing my friends play like Pilot Wings and Super Mario World and going, oh, this looks cool. It's like those games I played, but a little bit better. Twice as better. Oh my God. And my mom just said, no, you have a system. You're not getting another one. So this is probably my greatest, I've told this before, but this is probably my greatest and craftiest moment. And it's all downhill from there. I had 10 kids in my class chip in $17 to buy it for me so that my mom couldn't say anything. And I coordinated. And I was like Hartman going, all right, you buy me the blue Mega Man, you get me the yellow one. And they all chipped in, and I got it for it was my 12th birthday in summer of 91. And I still have it over here. It still works. It can drink now. It's legal.
Super Nintendo is legal to drink.
Yeah. Beyond. Yeah. But yeah, it was, she couldn't say anything, and I just kind of that's probably my favorite summer of childhood. Was the year before it was Genesis and Guns N' Roses cassette, I think it was before Use Your Illusion came out. So it was,
Appetite?
It was the cassette of Civil War. It was for Terminator 2. It was Civil War and Don't Cry. We got the maxi single cassette. Sure. And then the next year was Super Nintendo and Nirvana's Nevermind. So that edged it out. It was kind of that was a very memorable summer, playing A Link to the Past and listening to Nevermind and Bleach and some Metallica and all that good stuff. But, good times.
Yeah. It is, Super Nintendo was everywhere. It's not like it was a less successful. It felt to me more like a continuation. Like, all right, here's the new Link game. Here's the new Mario game. Whereas Sega felt like, because they helped take games in a more mature direction, not as much as a failed console at the same time, which was the TurboGrafx 16, which is like, here's Splatterhouse, which is
honorable mention. Yeah.
That it would feel weird to not talk about its existence.
Which, not to show my hand, but to totally show my hand, is on the Switch. They have a Namco collection, yeah. So moving on. No, I think we're in agreement here. I think that the Genesis takes this one just for what it was Sega's. It made Nintendo. It gave them a run for their money. And that was, it lost in the end. I think you could still argue this. This is still a debate that goes on. I have a book here about they were supposed to turn it into a movie with Seth Rogen's company was going to do it. I don't know what happened, but yeah, I think we got to give the slight edge to Genesis here.
Yeah. To Genesis in this second era 16-bit system.
Correct. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think this is a good place to take a break because we're about to get into the more modern era of video games. So let's do that, and we'll be right back with the modern era of video game consoles.
Get over here.
Oh. A while ago, Max Fun sent out a survey that included the question, how can Max Fun best support you right now? And there's some really amazing replies here, including this one, which is really, really simple, from Kara in Athens, Georgia. She just said, I'm just glad you're here. And I think that kind of says it all. I love that comfort of knowing that the podcast that I listen to is going to be there for me week after week during a very weird time.
Like comfort food. Hal, you are my meatloaf and mashed potatoes.
And you are my mac and cheese with bacon bits in it. And also apple juice. And then after that, I'm probably going to have some peanut M&Ms and Doritos. And then later on, I'll have ice cream. And then late at night, when I should be asleep, I'm going to have Fruity Pebbles with marshmallows because it's cheat day and I'm trying to get it all in.
Anyway, we're in awe of how our community has come together to enjoy and share our content right now. Content like what you just heard. And we're glad that we can inspire you or make you laugh when you need it most. You are part of the community just by listening. You are supporting this community when you join as a member.
You can see all the different membership levels and their corresponding gifts at MaximumFun.org/join. You get the bonus content starting at $5 per month. Some folks give $50 or $100 per month, but it's most important that you give what's comfortable for your budget. We have a feeling you'll like being a member, and we want you to stick around.
And if the level that you're comfortable with is $10 a month, I have good news. Not only do you get to choose a cool pin to wear, this week all of our members at $10 and above have the option to purchase additional pins from the store. All proceeds from the additional pin purchases will go to charity, and there are many great pins to choose from. So visit MaximumFun.org/join to sign up at $10 a month, and you can grab yourself some additional pins too for a great cause.
Just to remind you, as always, because that is my job, make sure you tell Maximum Fun that you listen to We Got This with Mark and Hal when you are filling out that form, whether you're upgrading or joining for the first time. That is how you can make sure that we're benefiting from your contribution. And again, we're so grateful to all of the members right now who are allowing us to keep creating this program and giving us the means to do that. We're trying to make sense of all this too. It is such a weird time. And the fact that our members are still supporting us is just amazing and inspirational, and hopefully we're bringing you joy that equals your support. It's almost too good to be true to imagine it's happening. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Those of you who are able to join and become members during this drive, thank you too. And those of you who can't, but continue to listen to the show and support us in other ways, we appreciate you too. And now let's get to the end of this thing.
And we're back.
Yes.
So now we've jumped past the early 90s and the Super Nintendo. We didn't mention the Sega CD that came out the same year as the Super Nintendo.
Good.
It's fine. My thing, we had a Sega CD. We had a Sega Genesis. For me, the Sega CD was all about Mad Dog McCree. It brought Mad Dog McCree from the arcade into my home.
Did it though?
And I loved that about it. It was, well, in a super pixelated version.
Yeah,
it was like the first one to use the CD technology.
Right.
Yeah.
It's Mad Dog McCree, but if everybody was in the witness protection program.
Yeah, they're all blurry and their voices all sound like this.
They have to eat spaghetti with ketchup sauce like a schnook.
Yeah.
But in 1994, following Sega CD, the first real move into the modern era of this to use CD-ROM technology was from a brand new not a brand new company, but a brand new player in this game. It had been Sega versus Nintendo for so long. In 1994, boom, Sony comes out with the original PlayStation. Were you guys PlayStation kids?
I was, but the PlayStation was originally supposed to be a collaboration with Nintendo, and there are a few. I think it was cartridge and disc. I think it had like the ability to do both, or it's like a slightly different.
They were going to use, it was the Nintendo PlayStation. They partnered with Sony to make it so they were licensing their games, but it would also have a disc drive, so it would have better sound quality. And what happened was they got nervous about having people pirating their discs. We'll get to what happened with them and their kind of fumble with the N64 and the cartridges. But last minute, and they shamed Sony. Last minute they announced that they were doing a partnership with Philips. So they announced it, and that was bad. That was, I mean, you see where it's gone now, and they made a competitor. Sega would bow out after this, but they created their biggest competitor, arguably. I don't think, we'll get into the third tier that comes a little bit later, but yeah, that's the backstory there.
I mean, the PlayStation is, my freshman year of college, I had to deal with my parents that if I had straight A's at the end of my first semester that I would get one. And I had I think a 3.8 grade average that semester.
That's not straight A's.
No, it was. There were no, it was
Dad.
Whatever the.
Leave me alone.
No, please.
I want to play my PlayStation.
I'm just saying straight A's would have been a 4.0 and you would have had a PlayStation, son.
I think it was
Go to your room.
I think it was hit a 3.8.
You got a 32X instead. Oh, great.
Here's a 3DO, you
bastard. No, that was, you got all D's.
Yeah, that was punishment. But
you got all 3 DOs, yeah.
Exactly. It was a game changer. It was
The PlayStation,
set of
yeah.
cartridges. The controller felt different. Everything about it felt different and new. And as the PlayStation has evolved and moved forward, those controllers have, like, there's something outside of the fact the console's look has changed. The controller is very similar now to what it was when it started. It's just better, sleeker, more buttons, more functionality, which is pretty cool.
That to me was a negative of the PlayStation. Like, I even thought that the Genesis, I was like, whoa, Genesis, 3 buttons, A, B, and C.
All right, Graham.
And then the PlayStation comes out and I'm like, oh, it's not even letters anymore. Now it's the triangle, the square, the X, For anyone listening,
Mark just held up 3 fingers in the German way, so we're going to have to kill him. We know that we know that he's actually a spy now.
You know what's funny? Ever since saying Inglourious Bastards, that's how I've said the number 3, so I don't get killed. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what every photer's guide tells you to do that. If only
exactly.
it had one.
Oh my God. But yeah, Sega came out with the Saturn in 95, which they were trying, but it didn't blow. It was all about the PlayStation until 96 when Nintendo introduced the Nintendo 64. So now the 2 big fighters in the arena are original PlayStation versus N64.
I just don't think it's close, though.
You think it's PlayStation over Nintendo?
See, we're gonna. I once again, I'm gonna make my case, and then we will. No, like I said, I've always been a Nintendo guy. I got into Nintendo, Sega recently. I've gotten into Sony, but the N64. That was the time that I kind of got out of video games. I think I played Mario 64, and I'm like, that's cool. My favorite franchise of all time is Legend of Zelda, and I have never played all the way through Ocarina of Time. Which is, people are like, that's the best one. I'm like, no, Link to the Past I think that's the best game, in my opinion, it's my favorite game of all time. The one on Super Nintendo. Anyhow, so I totally see what you're saying. If I'd played a PlayStation, I would probably be with you. So that's my case. I don't have a ton of nostalgia. That's kind of they weren't quite there yet. The games they're muddy, they're blurry, and they couldn't do what PlayStation could do, but they pulled off a lot with those cartridges. Resident Evil 2 I remember being really impressive.
Well, I think they had 3. Again, this is from not being inside the gaming world, but more of an outside observer or play it with friends who weren't necessarily gamers. They had 3 huge, epic, game-changing titles that they had. One, you mentioned Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, which was a long-time play-it-by-yourself game. But they also had Mario Kart 64, which was I can't tell you the number of parties in 96, 97, like high school and college where we played either Mario Kart 64 and of course GoldenEye. Nintendo 64 bringing out GoldenEye. That was such a revolutionary game.
Yeah. The N64 was the first console to have the 4 ports. I mean, I might be wrong on that, but it was at least the first one that I remember where, sitting around and playing. I didn't get into GoldenEye as much as that was a big college game for a lot of people. Like that was just nonstop because it was like having a LAN party in one room. You didn't have to connect through all the wires like the Game Boy with their connector, tethered to someone, but Mario Kart 64, that was huge. The battle mode, especially going in and you'd have to pop the balloons and all that stuff was crazy. It was crazy to see that in 3D.
That seemed to me like the first time, especially, and maybe that was it. Maybe that it was because of the 4 ports that you had, playing video games for me became a party thing, a thing that you did. It was one corner of a party. Any party was going to have 4 people playing either GoldenEye or Mario Kart 64.
The other corner, there was a guy with a guitar, and then there was a guy, smoking the pot in the other corner.
Yeah, exactly. There's the room with the door closed.
Hell yeah. That's where they're playing PlayStation. It was a little more adult.
Yeah, they had some wine out at a cheese board. And they were
oh my God.
I do want to shout out another great console from this period that was not as big a success, but I think in retrospect is maybe one of the greatest consoles of all time, although I don't think it stands a chance to win here, which is the Sega Dreamcast.
Yeah.
It was a 4-port system. It came out in 1998. The graphics are great. You can still play games on it. I bought a Dreamcast a couple years into living out here, so it had to be like early 2000s. And I wound up, one of my best friends, I gave it to him and he has it in Chicago. So when I went and visited him, we actually played on it. But some of the titles are great. Their Crazy Taxi is great. Virtua Tennis is maybe the best tennis game I've played on any system. But what was
Is that
really
the system that had the comedy boxing game?
I don't remember.
I just remember a character with like a giant afro. He was super skinny and had one tooth.
I know what you're talking about. I think that was on the Dreamcast.
That was a Dreamcast game.
That was a port of an arcade game.
Gotcha.
What was great about the Dreamcast was the controllers had these little units that you put in them that had a screen.
The VMUs, yeah.
The VMU you could play without it, but if you put it in, it would store game data. But also, like for a football game, this is the only time that I've ever seen this in any game. The most frustrating part of playing a football game against somebody is they can see the playbook. So even if you have 3 or 4 plays in front of you, they have a good idea among those which one you're going to pick. This took your entire playbook and put it onto a little screen in your controller. So nobody could see what the defense or offense was picking like an actual football game until they were in formation on the field.
This is such a specific reason to love this.
It's such a smart use of that. And it wasn't the only use that they had, but
it was the original Wii U.
Yes, exactly. It crawled so that the Wii U could fly.
Right. There you go. Yeah. And also I should note that it was the first online. It was the first system with a modem in there. Yeah. But get this. Here's just a side note is the NES. If you look at the bottom of that system, there's a place where they had planned to have a modem in there. In Japan, they had online for the NES.
Oh, wow.
You could check the stock market in 1983 or 84, 85. They added, I don't know when it came out, but they had it in their Trojan horse ready to go because that system was from 1985 in the US to 1994. It made it to the way they could have. If Genesis hadn't come around, we might have been playing online games on the NES, which blows my mind that it was like if they were that forward thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Moving forward in time.
Yes.
We're going to save 2001. That's going to be era 3, I think, because that's when the next big
era.
But we also have the, in 2000, the PlayStation 2 comes out and then the Nintendo GameCube in 2001. This is round 2 in the second great battle of the consoles.
And by the way, here are a couple of exclusive, because Nintendo has a ton of exclusives. You don't play Mario anywhere else but on a Nintendo. Right. Donkey Kong, Zelda, and they have their exclusive properties. This is just a list of Sony's exclusives. Grand Theft Auto, Final Fantasy, Metal Gear Solid.
Mm-hmm.
And they also launched stuff like Kingdom Hearts was on there, Devil May Cry, Ratchet and Clank, God of War. Games that they're more adult. The parallel lines of the two of them start to break apart here.
Mm-hmm.
And then the GameCube was kind of a mess.
It seems like this, they went from, PlayStation went into more adult games and Nintendo stayed more family friendly because they were a 100-year-old toy company.
Right. Yeah. Once again, I saw the PlayStation 2. I remember 2000, I think, and it came out and that was a couple years after DVD. I think DVD was like 97, 98. Mm-hmm. So it was, oh my God, I can watch The Matrix on this. Like that was, it was the Matrix and Fight Club were the ones that everyone was buying and playing, but that was major for it. I mean, the combination of it having a DVD player and then the GameCube used these little proprietary discs because they were worried about piracy. Once again, they were like
mini discs or mini DVD.
Yeah, they weren't willing to move forward, and they were just, they're very traditional, and that I love them and hate them for it, or not hate them, but it's a frustrating company, where you go, and but because they're willing to try new stuff, that's where I enjoyed their stuff. For me, the GameCube was Metroid Prime, which was fantastic. Wind Waker. But yeah, Wind Waker was a huge disappointment for a lot of people, but I remember thinking, I love cartoons. They were so expressive. People were expecting it to look like a super realistic, gritty version of Ocarina of Time. And it came out and people were so down on it. They called it Zelda as an animation cell. I played it and I thought it was great. Once again, I'm biased because I didn't have the other, I wasn't interested, or for whatever reason, I went with Nintendo. So, I absolutely, I think PS2 takes this one.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about, now we jump ahead to 2001. But actually, before we do that, let me back up. Where we are so far, our finalists, as we have determined them, are the Nintendo Entertainment System, the Sega Genesis, and specifically the PlayStation 2. Would that be fair to say?
Yes, that sounds right.
Correct.
Al? Yep.
So now we move on to 2001, and Microsoft, the giant computer juggernaut, decides to get into the game by building a 733 megahertz Intel Pentium 3 run Xbox. That is a graphically supercharged actual home computer Pentium processor inside a video game console.
Yeah.
And then 1 year later, they launched Xbox Live, another game changer. Where do you guys fall on the, I know you've shown your proclivities toward either Nintendo or PlayStation or Sega, but what about this newcomer into the game?
I had this one. This one I got for Star Wars Battlefront, the Battlefront, I don't know, the one from 2003 or 4.
Was that Knights of the Old Republic, or this was before that?
That was that was the same time.
Yeah.
But it was that first multiplayer, and I didn't play online. I was happy just to hold this giant, doorstop of a thing, and I got it later.
I got it. Huge console.
Yeah, and I don't know if I have it. Got rid of it. It's holding up this barn door over here. It's and next to this giant. Yeah, it was great. I mean, I didn't play much of it. I think I really was all about that game, and that was a time where if you just saw the announcement of the new Star Wars, the new Rogue Squadron game. It's been forever since they've done. Like, I was into the Rogue Squadron on N64 and the TIE Fighter games on the PC. So I'm excited about that new one. But the Xbox Star Wars game I'd never seen anything like that. The multiplayer, and Halo, of course. We have to talk about Halo. That was unbelievable.
This does seem like this was the system where graphics just took a massive leap.
Yeah.
I mean, you could watch sports games and they looked more realistic than ever, and car racing games especially, because it was easier to render a car with AutoCAD than to render a human. I think specifically for me, it was first-person shooters and sports games. Just seeing buddies playing them, and noticing the massive difference, not being so being able to look at the forest because I'm not focused on the trees. It was a huge, huge step. And just beautiful.
Yeah.
Like it was the cinematics were actually cinematic.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't get over the controller because I felt like they were like, we're not your daddy's video game system. We're going to flip the control pad and one of the sticks.
Describe the difference in the controller.
It's cockeyed. That's what it is, Mark. That's how I'll describe it. It's cockeyed. You have your traditional, what makes sense, and Nintendo has done it too, is like, give me 2 sticks and then give me a control pad and then give me the the buttons have to be different. I don't like their shoulder pads. I think the way it's held, they don't feel as pronounced.
Shoulder pads. Like the X and Y buttons on the top.
The top buttons. Everything about it felt like too much real estate. And then they moved everything around just because they had to. I don't think they needed to.
You had that Mountain Dew green in the center for but we're talking about the refined one. They called it the Duke, and it was also referred to as the potato controller. It was just this massive thing right there. They shouldn't have released it in Japan. Like they're very slimline, their controllers. This thing was, and they discontinued it after, I don't know, a year or something, or less than a year. Yeah, that was interesting. That was just trying to set themselves apart for sure with that.
This system did not last very long. The original Xbox, it only lasted for 4 years. Because in 2005, they dropped the Xbox 360. But we'll get to that in a second. Meanwhile, in Japan, at Nintendo headquarters, they were going more portable around this time. You had the Game Boy Advance come out and the Nintendo DS.
Can I ask a question, Mark?
Yeah.
Can I stop? Let me just stop you for a second.
Uh-huh.
Does it make sense to just say something that is purely handheld I feel like handheld is its own. The only one that really goes back and forth is the Nintendo Switch. I think that counts as a console 100%, but anything handheld feels like it's its own category.
I think you're right. And there are a lot of handheld ones.
But what's interesting is that this war escalates, this new console war between Microsoft and Sony launches, and Nintendo sidesteps for a number of years for I want to say either after the Game Boy Advance, or no, after rather the GameCube in 2001, their next console didn't happen until the Wii.
So 2006.
Was like 5 years later. So for 5 years, they decided we're going to give you every version of handheld.
Which is crazy to me that's a long time.
But look at the Xbox. Look at the Xbox to the Xbox.
They call
Xbox 360.
They called that their third pillar because they were kind of they didn't know where they were going. They had the Game Boy was successful all the way from 89 to till 2004 when they did the Game Boy Advance, but that system lasted forever. And then, they kind of said, "Oh, we don't know how this console thing is doing. Let's try a new Game Boy." And the DS came out, then the DS Lite, and then the DS Lite is where it took off. It's up there with like the PS2 as far as sales. I'm not sure exactly what the numbers are, but they were kind of worried. Like we have the Game Boy, but we don't want to kill that line, so let's put out the DS, and then we've got the GameCube, and that's not doing well. The DS takes off, and then it takes them into their next console.
Right. Before we get to that console, though, I want to stick with the primary battle that seemed to be happening between Sony's PlayStation and Microsoft's Xbox, because Microsoft drops the 360 in 2005, and then a year later in 2006, Sony drops the PS3, this time using Blu-ray discs. So the amount of storage, the amount that you can get into one game is growing and growing and growing every time. And again, they're using their classic titles. Grand Theft Auto 4 comes out then. You've got Call of Duty, Assassin's Creed, Resident Evil 5 came out on this. Final Fantasy games were beautiful on this new Blu-ray version. They pulled Sonic the Hedgehog. I guess Sega loaned them Sonic the Hedgehog. Mm-hmm. Or said, here, we're not making these anymore. You guys can have it. And so in this battle, you've got Xbox 360 battling against PS3. Did the controllers, what changed aside from the Blu-ray for PS3?
I think the DualShock started with 2. I think PS3 might have been the first one was it the first one with the 2 joysticks on it? That was 2. 2 was the first.
Yeah, because, the first analog stick was on the N64, and then I think the PS1 added it. I think they had it wasn't a D-pad, but it was the cross type thing.
I think the big thing was the Bluetooth, right? You didn't need a dongle to play wireless, like it's wired wireless. Like these were completely wireless controllers, except for charging them.
Yeah.
Their design worked, like the first design worked, so they just sort of stuck with it and slightly refined it. I think
and that feels like where we are right now with these systems is with PlayStations, like anything after the introduction of the PlayStation and the Xbox, those two consoles are just kind of duking it out in getting better technology and their online versions and getting faster with downloading online games. And that battle we know what's happening in that. And that's more of a tech specs battle. I think the fascinating one at this time is the Nintendo Wii that came out in 2006. Cause that once again, Nintendo has rethought the whole thing. This was the one that was my favorite out of the bunch. I still have my Wii is still hooked up.
Sure.
I have accessory. I play it a lot. I still play the Wii frequently. They have since shut down Wii's online store. So I still have all the games that are inside my system and also the, CD, the actual hard copy clamshells, but I still play them regularly and I still enjoy them. And I think it was the use of the motion control that we introduced. Again, it's a party game. It's designed for people who want their gaming system, who don't take it as seriously and want it to be a toy. It is a fun way to play with friends. And it also, I think, led to Xbox 360 releasing the Kinect, which was their controller-less version, which I also love and have here.
PlayStation has a version of that as well that I had.
That's right.
That came with the PlayStation 3. That was also, the PS3 was the birth of the PlayStation Network, which is their online hub. So they were behind, and it certainly has its problems, but that was a major step forward for Sony in general. Nintendo, if the one area, if you were going to be an Olympics gymnastics judge about it, they would get a 0, 1, or 2 on online experience almost every time.
Yeah.
Nintendo?
Yeah.
And I think part of that comes from the fact that they skew younger. You don't want to give younger, more innocent games. those kids don't need to be online talking to people. Like the online gaming is great in how it brings us together. It's also super toxic. And I've heard a child and an adult who I've never met before, but are playing an NBA 2K game together, cursing at each other like two sailors who are getting ready to throw down outside of a bar.
Yeah.
So Nintendo is like, yeah, you can play online. Like the Animal Crossing has gone from 900 of us at a Twitter direct message to a Slack channel, like a whole Slack channel where we're all keeping up to date on stuff.
We should mention this. This is how, I knew Ken from Twitter, but this is how we all came together. You and I, how this all happened was, I think Ken just sent an invite or started a group, and it was a few people, and it got to about like 18 people. People come in and out, and then it got bigger and bigger, and then we moved to the Slack channel so it would be more organized. Here's a place for turnips. Here's a place to trade fossils. Here's the nook and cranny spot. Here's the this, that, the other, and that's how this whole thing came together. Really,
yeah.
I know when a plan comes together.
Same, but we had to take that. Like we have to do a lot of the work ourselves because their online experience is so bad. It's made to keep things private and separate, which I get, but it also this is an era in which I get on. Just before we were recording, I jumped on PlayStation and for 45 minutes talked to 3 of my friends and was playing online basketball with them.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what we do. We get together and it's like, hey, you getting on tonight? Yeah, I'll get on. Or Ken reminds me for the 900th time that he has to drop off 50 songs to my island and please get on, which at this point, I'm almost not getting on out of principle.
I've stepped back because I feel like the game now that I've done certain things, I'm playing it less, but in a much more relaxed way, and I kind of feel like we're going to be playing this game for years. I mean, I am. Even the producer said that they have plans for at least 2 years of supporting. And I think if it's doing well and they can figure out, maybe they'll do DLC at some point. But that's another thing you have to give to them is they're not doing the horse armor. That was the big joke of, so what game was that? It was a 360 or PS3 game where they introduced horse armor in like Skyrim or something. People freaked out. I had to pay for horse armor. But yeah, no, let's where should we go from there? I kind of lost my train of thought.
We're looking now at modern times and the last few years where it's just been battle between, Xbox makes a new thing, PlayStation makes a new thing, Xbox makes a new thing, PlayStation makes a new thing. And then the Wii in 2006 comes out and the Wii lasts a very long time until the Wii U comes out in 2012, which I'm not terribly familiar with. Is the Wii U still around? Did it kind of come and go?
No. See, the fact that you have to ask that means it didn't do well. That's the part. There was a problem with the naming of the system. People thought it was a tablet that went with the Wii. So I always thought it should have been.
It sounds like it's an online tutorial YouTube page that tells you how to play. Tells you how to play Wii games.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, because at this point, Nintendo's doing their own thing. Sony and Microsoft, they're releasing roughly at the same time or a year apart. And they're just in their own lane now. And they put this one out and, I always thought they should have called it Wii HD or Super Wii, where you go, oh, you don't want to call it the Wii 2 because then it looks inferior to the PS3. And the naming system and the Xbox is all over the place with that, where it's, they did 360 to match the 3, and then it was I can't keep track of.
Now it's the 1.
Now it's the 1.
Yeah.
But
which is good because it's
not the number.
It's 1 cent, but it smells slightly different depending on who's wearing it, but any gender can wear it.
Exactly.
Let's talk about the most recent. I'm going to add one to this list. Kate McManus did an amazing job with a very complicated topic.
She did.
We have one more on this list to talk about, and this one came out just 3 years ago. That is, of course, where you can play Animal Crossing, and that is on the Nintendo Switch, which is the hybrid console first introduced to me when a buddy pulled it out at a bar in New York. Shout out to my ultra Nintendo fan buddy and hilarious improviser Scott Martinek in New York City, who introduced me to the Nintendo Switch by pulling it out in a bar, popping the controllers off the sides, and handing me one. And I thought, because we were in a board game bar, so it was one of those, like, people are sitting and doing there's table gaming and all this stuff happening.
Yeah.
And he pulls this out, and I thought this was the most amazing bonkers. It reminded me of when I was a kid, like you said, at that, in the kitchen when you saw Mario for the first time. Like the idea that this is untethered to anything. It's just a miniature version of a Nintendo Entertainment System, but with better graphics and.
Yeah, they when they announced it, people couldn't figure out that they thought that the dock was going to be where the power was, that it wasn't the actual screen that you're holding in your hand, that's the console. It's insane to look at that and go, they've packed that into roughly, like, I think it's supposed to be, it's not like between a PS3 and a PS4, so it's not quite there. So they keep on there in this weird area. But I mean, still, that this is, a PS3.5 is bananas. Sorry for the language there.
Like, you can say bananas.
Yeah. This is a PG-13.
I had to get one in there. Yeah.
That's your one.
But that everything that the Nintendo Switch has built in is a superior version. And this is the way all computing has been, I suppose, but that is a superior version of what took up half of my bedroom as a kid.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Between the TV, the cords, the controllers, the console. Like, it's all there, and it literally can fit in the front pocket of a backpack.
Yeah.
That blows my mind.
And then they have the Switch Lite also, which my sister got, because I've had 3 or 4 people addicted to this game that never had played. My sister's never played a video game in her life. My friend Damien hasn't played a game since the Wii, and he got it. And he, shout out to Damien and Harvell's in Santa Monica. A little plug there. Yeah. He hasn't played it. He still has the Wii and loves playing that. But he said if it weren't for this lockdown, there's no way I would be playing this thing. Right. So there is a really good social aspect to it because, you can bring it around. You can play it that way. I don't really play it portably, but it's been a real
because it will throw to a television.
Yeah. I think as a console, and it took me like a year of Ken prodding me to get one.
Right.
So I was like, it's expensive. I play PS4. I'm happy with the experience on there. There are games I have that I've Red Dead Redemption 2. I think I played it for half an hour. And so there's just stuff I haven't gotten to. And when I got it, I'm blown away by how seamlessly it moves from dock to handheld. That's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
To me, I love the communal experience of I was at a podcast convention last year and hanging out with new friends I'd made. Some of the people from Polygon had their Switch. We all had our Switches. So we would meet like after the restaurant had closed down and the restaurant sort of lounge area had closed down. We would go there late at night and we would all have our Switches. We would connect and play Mario Kart. And that is a really cool communal aspect.
Yeah,
what falls
absolutely.
down for me is we are in an age now where gaming is so much about the connected experience that you have. It's less about what you do by yourself, even though there are great solo games to play like Fallen Order. It's hard to even think of other ones because we've moved into this world where it is a communal experience and I want to play with other people. I have lists on PlayStation of people I play Overwatch with, people I play NBA 2K with, people who are really close friends that I play NBA 2K with. So I know who to look for when I'm playing different games. We'll try stuff out together. On the Switch, I love playing Animal Crossing. I love visiting people, but I have to text them or get on a Discord if I want to talk to them. That to me is mind blowing because that feels like I'm going back to 2006.
Right.
Rather than like everything about the console is great, except I feel isolated while I'm playing it when I want to be connected and have a shared gaming experience with other people.
Yeah. I hear you. I think it's just, I've never really, I think my first online game was playing, on the Wii U. I think, we started that, Ken started the Twitter thing for Wii U and playing Mario Kart. It seems like forever ago and it hasn't been that long. So then we switched over to this one. Yeah, but I think it's just, I've just stayed in that old school playing in a room or bringing it with you and playing with other people. There's a game that came out, and this is not an advertisement, by the way. There's a game that came out called Clubhouse Games. Played around with a little bit, and because of we're in the time with the pandemic and everything, I haven't had a chance to play it with someone, in person. But the idea is you put the screen down and you can play checkers and you can move the things on the screen with your fingers. You face someone else and you're playing this little game. And if someone gets mad, they can pick it up and slide the checker. They can throw the pieces off the board. So it's these little things like that, because the Joy-Cons are actually really pretty advanced for what, how simple they look. And we've got a Splatoon lime green one, but like they've got, they're pretty advanced. My argument with this is, it's hard to pick. It's really kind of apples and oranges, as you said, because at the beginning, Hal, because it's what you're looking for. The Switch for me it has every Nintendo game, Genesis, all the old catalog, everything back to, I don't know. The Namco games, arcade games, all this stuff. So if you're looking for something that's everything Nintendo that's exclusive and basically everything that's not Sony and Microsoft, this is the all-in-one machine. Right. So that's where I stand on it. And that's my final answer.
Well, that to me comes, it does, this actually harkens back, I think, to the episode we did with Chloe Dykstra.
Yeah. Board
games versus video games.
Right.
And that notion of, it comes down to, is the social element of it is such a huge part of it. And is there more benefit to being in a room full of people playing or to playing online? I'm one that I avoid online gaming unless it's specifically with people I know and friends of mine, for the sole reason that I'm trying to avoid the toxicity of it.
Yeah.
Because as a person who is looking into it from the outside, the only thing that I ever hear about online gaming is stories like Gamergate.
Yeah.
It's just how toxic that social environment is. So I'm just like, oh no, this is not a world I want to get into. I'll play with friends if we set up like, hey, you and I, let's play this at this time. And my introduction to social gaming of this type has happened fairly recently with the last console I want to put on this list, which is my personal new favorite. I don't know if you'd even call it a console, and that's the Oculus Quest. I love the Oculus Quest. That has introduced me to now like Fred and Andy and Annie, Fred's wife I'd say Annie, Fred's wife, as in people who don't know Annie from Thrilling Adventure Hour, but specifically because they are in the same house and have two Oculuses. And they'll be playing in two separate rooms of the same house. And but we'll play, I play tennis with Fred, or we all play Echo VR together, which is like zero gravity frisbee soccer. That's, great and a blast. But even then, you'll I wound up like, this is so fun. I'm getting to play with my friends, but we're playing against some people we don't know. And some guy comes up and just starts like smashing his virtual balls on my face. And I'm like, we're all having a good time, man. We don't need you to do that.
Like, that is out there. But it also, you kind of see, it's sort of like actual life, right? You're going to meet people, and some people you meet in your life are going to be clunkers. And you will also meet people who are similar enough to you in either values or just whatever commonalities there are, and people who are nice. And those are the people who stay. The people who are bad go. This is, I was playing a game of basketball with two friends of mine that I know from online. And one of them was a more recent friend, and he had like 12 steals in the game, but we had lost, and it wasn't the best game. And we were still at chat parties, just the three of us. We weren't talking to anybody else. And he went to complain to his girlfriend about how nobody gave him credit for the number of steals he had, just trash talking me and my friend, but didn't realize he had left his mic on. So for 10 minutes, we listened to him rant, just laughing and laughing and laughing.
Oh,
and then eventually you just heard like the of him turning it off.
But even that, like, friends list. It's like, here's a story of the social life of online gaming. I overheard my buddy talking crap about me.
But that's not, again,
you know what I mean?
Who knows? Doesn't that let you cut him loose in a way that?
Well, while we're recording this, we're doing recording through a video chat. I've stood up several times and they've seen my underwear. So that's the most embarrassing thing that's happened on this podcast. I'm not wearing. I told them when I told you guys I'm not wearing pants to this one.
That's fair.
That's the rule. Yeah.
It was your one condition. That was on your rider.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Well, we appreciate you staying seated for most of it.
Yeah. No, I try. Yeah. When I get up, I lurch. I duck down a little bit. So.
But I think that we've got our list from this modern era to join the original NES, the Sega Genesis, the PlayStation 2. What do we pull from this modern era into our final four? Or do we pull one? Or do you think our victor comes from those three?
Oof. What do you think?
It's hard. I think there's a severe recency bias, but I don't know that any of these modern systems has paved the way for anything. None of them would exist without the finalists that we already have. So if we're looking at it historically, again, that's the challenge, right? If you go by what's the best console, well, it's got to be one of the ones now. The graphics are better.
Right. There's
a better library of games in general. It's not either as bloated or as anemic. And the online experience adds so much. But if you look at the impact, like the PlayStation 4 is hands down the best console that they've put out. I really enjoy playing it. Enough that I'm in for the PlayStation 5. Definitely going to get it. No question.
Yeah.
But it's not like a trailblazing console in the way that none of these the Switch has tried something that I think is really interesting. And I can't wait to see if anybody else tries to do it. I don't think that they will, because I think Nintendo figured out handheld better than anyone. And now they've merged them in a way that nobody else can.
Yeah, I would say that the Switch to be the ultimate machine is not quite there. We need the Switch 2 or the Switch U. Oh God, I hope not. It's not the Switch U. I am interested to see where that goes, and I'm very interested to see. I haven't been this interested in Sony machine ever. Just the Resident Evil, was it Village? The Resident Evil 8 looks wonderful. There's a few games on there. There's one game where you're in Tokyo and there's Ghost Core, I think. No, that's Ghostbusters. Sorry. There's another game. There's a few games on there that are really intriguing. So I'm going to follow that one. But I think what you're saying is we have to go back to the most iconic one, and that should we say at the same time? Or
yeah, I think we all are probably in agreement on looking at the variety, looking at the social elements of their later versions and this original version as well, the cultural implications, the cast of characters they created that permeated other media, and the technical accomplishment that it was, but most specifically for its cultural impact. I think there's one clear winner in this.
Yep.
The NES?
NES. Yeah. That's it. People of the world, it can't be a surprise. I'll never forget the first time I played a game on mine. It was Contra all night with my best friend. And my
99 lives.
He up, down, left, right, BA, start.
I love it.
Or select start if you want two players. That's how I always remember it.
Exactly. You have to do the select start. My mother came running into my bedroom because she heard us going, shoot him, shoot him, shoot him, and thought that an intruder had made it into our house. But it's hard to understand now what it did for video games, because that industry was dead. Atari had killed it dead. To put out a video game system assures you no sales. So even calling it the NES and releasing it with Rob the Robot as like an educational tool and making it sound like a home computer.
Yeah.
That helped revolutionize games. And without that console, I don't know that we would have any of the consoles that we have today, because it would just be arcades. It would be arcade machines. Like who knows how eventually we'd get to home, but we don't know how home video game systems would have gone.
We would have gotten it this year.
Yeah.
We would have gotten it in 2020. Yeah.
COVID would have moved video games into the home.
I mean, when a game like Ice Climbers is one of your first 17 out of the box and you can still play as those characters today and they're part of like video game lore, there's just nobody. The Genesis, there are a lot of great consoles that all have their marks on history, but you don't get any of them in America or a lot of other parts of the world without the NES. It's the best video game console ever. Asked and answered.
Yeah, we got there, gents.
Well said. Well said.
Nathan Hamill, thank you for coming on the show again.
Yeah, this was fun.
This has been an absolute treat. Anything you want to plug? Tell the people where to find you. Give them your video game handles.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, I'd have to look up the my creator code, but just check Twitter, check my NathanHamill.com. It's in in my news section. I posted like my Animal Crossing designs, and Nathan Hamill on Twitter, Instagram, and all that. So,
well, thank you again for being here. And thank you, of course, to the Poodoo for the topic. This topic is closed, but there are many more topics to discuss. So please reach out to us on Twitter. Check out the Maximum Fun subreddit, or
you can email us at wegotThisPodcast@gmail.com or go to our Facebook group. That's where it's all happening. Talk about your video game memories with us. Facebook.com/groups/WeGotThisPodcast. Thank you to producer Ken Bloom, researcher Kate McManus for this great doc that we've had for years in anticipation of this very night. Also, graphic designer Uri Kelman and QA engineer Jen Alba.
And thanks, of course, to our musicians, Jonathan Dinerstein and Mike Furman, for our score and theme song, respectively. And thanks to you, the people of the world, the only people of the world that I would jump into an online game scenario with, sight unseen, and be completely comfortable. And thank you for giving us a chance to sit down with Nathan and talk video games. This has been a real blast. For Hal Lublin, I'm Mark Gagliardi.
For Mark Gagliardi, I'm Hal Lublin. And don't worry, everybody.
We got this.
We got this.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening once again. I just want to thank everybody, all of our members, for supporting this show. We really are super grateful that you've chosen to contribute financially to support us being able to create this show in a way that is authentic and beholden to nobody but our audience.
Mark is beholden to me, but if you haven't had a chance to become a member yet,
I'm holding him right now.
So, please hold me.
I'm going to be holding you soon, baby.
I'm holding you. If you haven't had a chance to become a member yet, you can do so at MaximumFun.org/join. It is really simple. And be sure while you're doing it, do not forget to tell them that you listen to We Got This with Mark and Hal. That is how we benefit directly from your contribution. So thank you during this weird time, especially for supporting us. And we'll be back next week, the final week of this extended Max Fun drive. We're looking forward to bringing you that episode, and we hope you enjoy it. Good night or a good day.
How about a little sugar for Ken?
MaximumFun.org.
Comedy and culture.
Artist owned.
Audience supported.